Welcome to The Lean Manufacturer, our new podcast dedicated to all areas manufacturing. In our first episode, Chris Wolff is joined by Howard Heppelmann, Divisional Vice President and General Manager of PTC's IoT business, to discuss PTC's journey from engineering excellence to manufacturing prowess, and how PTC remains at the forefront, driving innovation with people, partners, and data, bringing value to the shop floor.
Welcome to the Lean Manufacturer podcast. I'm Chris Wolff, call me Wolffie. I'll be your host for this series of conversations with some amazing manufacturers as they embrace lean principles to continuously improve their manufacturing operations. We're going to get our start here today, naturally, with PTC and talk a little bit about PTC's role in the lean manufacturer revolution. And who better to get started with than my colleague, Howard Heppelmann. Howard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Wolffie. Thanks for having me.
Howard, many manufacturers, even our own clients, don't think of PTC top of mind when it comes to bringing value to the shop floor. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, we have such a strong reputation in engineering and product development that that's a natural reaction that those companies would have. What I would say is, as a result of our foray into IoT, which now dates back roughly a decade, that is rapidly changing. And it'll take some time for industry to catch up and recognize that. But if you just look at today what the analysts that track the space or the other key players in the space say, PTC and our ThingWorx IoT technologies are broadly recognized by the analyst community as, the leader or close to the leader in almost every report for how we're helping manufacturing companies digitally transform. And partners like Microsoft, a very strategic PTC partner, but who has thousands of partners globally, identified PTC as both its IoT and manufacturing partner of the year. So I'm super proud of what we've accomplished, but it's, we got to get out and help manufacturers understand what it is that we have and how it can create transformational impact in their factories.
Well, there's congratulations on the analyst success PTC has had. There's a certain vanity pride that comes with being an upper right quadrant participant. But those analysts really help enterprise manufacturers understand how they can bring the value of the intelligence in their CAD designs, captive in their PLM systems, down to the shop floor in manufacturing. I often hear that referred to as a digital thread. Explain to me what that digital thread buzzword really means.
Yeah. First of all, I think if you asked 100 people, you'd get 100 different answers. But what it means to us is this concept that right at the heart of product design, in today's term, model-based definition, designers are putting information into the product model, into the product assembly, that is then used, it's always has been used, by the way, to then drive production on the factory floor. But in the past, it's sort of been a disconnected process between getting that information out of engineering to the factory floor. What's super exciting today with trends like model-based definition and enterprise PLM and IoT is that now we can stitch all of that together so that the information, the quality information that is captured in a model can be configuration managed in PLM. In PLM, today's enterprise PLM systems, we talk about unifying or associating the engineering bill of material and the manufacturing bill of material, and from the manufacturing bill of material, creating the associative process plans for the factory, essentially the digital twin of the process that we're going to use in the factory. And when you add IoT to that, what it allows for is no longer the manual manipulation of data coming from design to the factory, but a seamless digital thread of information that is extracting data right out of the design intent that's in those models and delivering it to the shop floor, to the operator, to the tool, to the quality inspection system that's going to both execute and then verify quality. Everybody is interested in this story because the efficiencies that will come along with automating engineering through manufacturing engineering and operations, automating that through digital thread will create immense velocity, but also ensure that information delivered to the factory is always accurate, which will significantly boost quality as well.
Well, best laid plans, we have a gleam in the eye of the engineering organization, but when those plans hit the factory floor, I'm sure there is valuable information that operators see firsthand that they'd like to send back upstream to the engineering team. That digital thread implies a two-way flow of information.
Today, operators don't really have a voice. They're on the factory, they're executing work, maybe at the end of the day told they did a good job or a bad job, but there isn't really a way to get the experiences or the challenges that they're being faced with from the front line in a meaningful way back to people who can do something about it. IoT and at least our ThingWorx portfolio of digital manufacturing solutions completely changes that. Now you have the ability to digitally connect the design to the operational steps on the factory and then collect that data and apply advanced analytics and other technologies to it to help understand what are the circumstances under which the poor operator on the front line who's trying to do the absolute best job they can are being constrained through other means and challenges. So being able to collect information directly from the front line and reuse it across the front line, but also elevate it to say, hey, really the problem here is we need to better enable the process that we're expecting this operator to do. We need to better configure the machines. Oh, actually, if we maybe changed the manufacturing technique that we're using, we would get better results. It's the ability to send information precisely down one way, forward propagation of design and product information to the factory, but then be able to understand where those processes are failing, where maybe the design for manufacturing didn't quite hit the mark, and be able to close the loop and bring that information back to continuously improve the overall process of the digital thread, not just the operations process within the factory.
Howard, lean as a discipline is all about rooting out non-value add, eliminating waste. And how is IoT playing a role in enabling lean disciplines and continuous improvement?
Yeah. That is a great topic to dig into. First, let's start by saying companies have been implementing lean principles for decades. And so the act of wanting to root out non-value added activities is not new. The challenge is the process itself is very analog and not very data rich. It's a lot of generally spreadsheets. It's a lot of engineers or data scientists going off and trying to model data to find root cause, after the problem has occurred. We developed a solution at PTC called Digital Performance Management. And much like how technology is often applied, the purpose of that solution is to take this analog process and completely transform it into a digital thread of continuous improvement. So it starts by connecting all the machines and feeding it, the material we're producing, the takt time and cycle time of that particular product, connecting the machines, connecting the worker, connecting the IT systems, connecting the quality systems. And then what it systematically does, it informs the operators and the plant management always 100% of the time of where their most important losses are in the process of producing a given product. We all know companies they start, their week, they want to produce 100 widgets. The weekends, they've got 50. Somewhere between the desire for 100 and the actual result of 50, there's all kinds of losses occurring. In an analog environment, it's really hard to go in and say, what's the number 1, 2, 3, or 10 things I should be working on? Where should I direct my resources in my technology to make sure that I'm lowering the water line, exposing the biggest rocks, and solving those problems? That's what digital performance management does, and it's an excellent example of how IoT can be layered in to connect disparate data sources, both IT and OT, create real-time visibility, but then actually provide a closed-loop digital thread for continuous management, improvement, and reuse of data.
You know, I'm one of these people who's thinking about retirement at some point in time, but we have a whole generation of machine whisperers who've been just so important to our manufacturers and helping them get the most out of the equipment and the people and the resources they have today. How are these machine whisperers embracing data that may be disrupting some of their thinking or causing them to have to find problems they didn't know existed? And how is that impacting new employees coming up in the factories who are replacing some of those intelligent folks?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. And I would start by saying the customers that I talk to every week, almost every day, are first and foremost worried about those machine whisperers no longer being around. Because many of those people are, people like you and me who aren't going to be in the factory for the next 20 years. But they rely on them, heavily rely on them in their sort of innate knowledge that they have of the manufacturing processes. I think if you think of IoT as the unifying technology, cloud and IoT, to bring data together and give it context, we all know today the power of analytics, and with all the recent advancements around generative AI, how important it can be, or how useful it can be, to turn data into insights through the application of analytics. And I think whether you're a machine whisperer that's been around in the factory for 30 or 40 years, but you're always dealing with that troublesome piece of equipment, or, oh my gosh, if you're that new person that's never had that experience before, the ability to augment the human experience in the factory with data and insights that tell them things before they would otherwise know them, or reveal insights to them that as an individual human or even a group of data scientists you could never compute, is incredibly valuable, not to replacing workers, but to lifting all workers in the factory and making them more effective about what they do, making, quite frankly, all the frontline operators that exist in a factory part of the problem-solving opportunity, not just executing, their task in a work cell, for example.
Well, you said a couple of magic words here, augmenting worker productivity with data and analytics, cloud. You mentioned IT and OT convergence. Talk to me a little bit about how PTC is teaming with some of the world's largest technology makers to bring those disciplines developed in IT and in the carpeted workforce environment out into the factory.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, some of these opportunities that are going to be unlocked through technology are only available when you put together a stack of technologies. So, for example, our IoT platform is incredible about being able to take disparate systems, bring them together, give them context, and allow you to quickly build new applications. But to run the sort of advanced analytics that oftentimes you need to make these insights instantly available requires an entire cloud computing infrastructure. So, for example, we have a very strong partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft named PTC last year both its IoT and manufacturing partner of the year. And it's really a 1 + 1 is 3 kind of relationship, because we need that scalability for many of the use cases. We also see customers today are wanting to scale to the enterprise. The only way they can actually digitally transform is to get impact at scale. And it's hard to do that sort of one system in a factory at a time. So I think there is an awareness going on that you can leave those systems that exist today there, but use modern technologies like PTC's ThingWorx IoT stack and Microsoft's Azure to be able to bring that data together to unlock new use cases, but also to make it accessible enterprise-wide to the entire production and factory network.
I think in the IT world, and even in my home, I take it for granted that I can pull data off of just about anything. But in a factory environment where some of these machines may be decades old, that's just not the case. What role has PTC played in enabling connectivity to this heterogeneous environment of factory devices?
Raw data off a machine is not very useful to anybody, right? But the first step is, can you connect to that machine and get the data off? And many years ago, we made a brilliant acquisition. We acquired Kepware Technologies, and Kepware today is a super important part of our portfolio because it provides that enterprise connectivity, rapid ability to connect to those assets. And there's many reasons for that, whether you want to expose data from an HMI, a historian, you want to push data into your ERP or a Microsoft Cloud, for example. But a critical path inside of PTC is getting that data into the ThingWorx platform and then powering the ThingWorx solutions. Now, one of those solutions we deliver is digitizing, digital thread enabling the continuous improvement process through DPM. And what this does is it replaces a long-standing practice that companies have had around performance management, but are doing it in an analog way with complete digital automation and analytics to drive improvements. Kepware is an important part for us to be able to connect to that machine or those machines, unify machine data and human data together to understand where the bottlenecks are and prioritize those that are most important to drive outcomes and improvements that have the most direct impact on the financial P&L.
So with digital performance management, or DPM, in association with ThingWorx and Kepware, you must be able to identify where bottlenecks are. Can you also model how much time or money resolving that bottleneck would release?
Absolutely. And that's what's super exciting. Today, many companies look at the individual performance of a machine. And while that may be important, what's most important is the performance of not just machines, but human processes as well, that are constraining throughput in a factory. And what we've done with DPM is really look at, if I start the week and I want to produce 100 units, but I end the week and I only have 50 good ones, where was the time lost? How can I narrow in on the most important things and then actually validate that actions I've taken have produced results that result in more hours of production back in the schedule? Hours of production are really easy to figure out. We either produce more or we consolidate operational costs to reduce our cost basis. So this is a very interesting tool. It's only possible because of technologies like IoT, and it completely automates a 100-year-old analog process, which is well understood, but slow to execute. And, may I add, when it is executed, normally we don't know what past results were. In a new world, if we solve problems, those problems are available to be retrieved for the next person, that new person that walks into the factory, to be able to understand what it was and what the best solution for resolution was.
Well, the notion of connecting machines and people and processes and having that be organic across an entire organization rather than isolated in the factory, that's a brave new world. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I alluded to it early on. Let's just start with this broad concept of digital thread. Everybody knows intuitively that a digital process is much faster, and if the data flowing through that process is good quality data, is going to result in much higher quality outcomes. When you think about the digital thread, today, I hate to say it, but it's not a very impressive story for how most companies get information from engineering to the factories that are going to build the products. And it usually starts with engineering completing a design, throwing PDFs to the factory, and then the factory working factory by factory to sort of build their processes for that factory. Digital thread, engineering to manufacturing digital thread in particular, changes that whole paradigm. Now we can take critical information that's part of the design that we all know is going to be used ultimately to run the machines, but oftentimes is reprogrammed by operators or folks on the factory floor. We can now take that information and pass it directly down to the operator who needs to perform a task. We can also use IoT then to connect to the tools and equipment in the factory to actually measure and validate the results. So we get this transformation to a place that is inline quality monitoring and validation at sort of digital speed of the forward propagation of engineering to manufacturing data.
You spoke earlier about somebody making, the week's plans for 100 units and ending up with 50 good ones. We haven't spoken about quality and the importance of IoT in improving quality in the factory. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacts the larger organization?
Yeah, by the way, there's so many use cases for IoT that impact quality, from the ability to, bring, again, data together from IT systems and OT systems and start to monitor how that data correlates to predict quality. So many of our customers today, using IoT technologies, can see where production is headed, and that if they don't intervene, it's going to result in quality or scrap. If you can get to the source of that problem before the scrap occurs, obviously that's a huge benefit. Another set of use cases would be, customers who run complex machines. And as great as that machine whisperer is, even humans can't always master a super complex machine. So being able to put IoT technology into those machines that understand what good looks like and also understand what bad looks like, and use AI and ML and generative technologies to actually help execute the machine, is a huge improvement in quality. But maybe the most important thing of all is understanding where are these quality issues arising from, and which ones need the most resource attention, both human and technology, to go solve. And that brings us back to this idea of, if I wanted to produce 100, but I only got 50, and let's say of the 50, the reason 10 of them didn't make the count is because they were poor quality, had to be scrapped or reworked. Being able to pinpoint exactly the source of where those quality issues are arising, and then go attack those with technology or with process improvement is really the key to staying extremely focused on, how you can drive quality improvement, but starting through the lens of what are the biggest and most important quality issues we need to prioritize.
Which comes back to that whole theme of lean and agility and being able to pinpoint where problems are and continuous improvement happening. One of the things that I've heard anecdotally is that the most difficult job on a factory shop floor is the end-of-line inspection. That's where you need the most seasoned professionals to be able to take a look at what looks like a fully produced piece or part. How is IoT helping the end-of-line inspection?
Number one, it gets back to this concept of being able to unify data. So, first of all, that inspection procedure is going to have certain verification steps that need to take place. And sometimes, in today's world, again, most of that is manual. It's humans. It's taking your best manufacturing resources from the production line and putting them at that end-of-line inspection. With IoT technologies and AR technologies, we can, number one, pass the data down that is specific and unique to that configuration, but then use IoT and AR as a way to validate, capture data from the inspection process itself and validate that, in fact, all of the inspections have been done, and then put that in a database so that we have a complete system of record and traceability. The net result of all of that is helping significantly improve the productivity of the workers on the inspection line, making it easier for less skilled workers to do that work because they're now being empowered by data insights and augmented capabilities to do the work, but ultimately a much better, faster, and quality output of the inspection process.
I understand Microsoft is just chomping at the bit to get at the data that is produced and captured through Kepware and ThingWorx and such, in order to create co-pilots that would enable efficiencies for people along the factory floor. Was that integral to the partnership with Microsoft and the award that you won?
Yeah, I mean, we work with Microsoft on so many fronts. We really see them as an incredibly strategic partner for our IoT business. If we fast forward 5 years from now, I think all customers will be in a cloud. And then if you think about technologies like generative AI and Copilot, the ability to layer that technology in to the understanding of the data and the data model that our applications have is incredible. For example, this doesn't exist today, but one of the conversations we're having, back to digital performance management. If I understand all of the data, my schedule, the SKUs of the products I'm going to be making, the work centers that those products flow through, where we have problems, how we've resolved those problems, the ability to use technologies like Copilot to empower everyone along that process are incredibly valuable. Now, if I'm an operator and someone has solved a problem before, I'm able to turn that knowledge and experience into, a mentor in the moment for what I need to get done. And we're only scratching the surface today of what's possible there. But it all starts first with a good data foundation. IoT provides that. But then these advanced capabilities and the cloud for computing to turn the data foundation and the data that we've collected, the experiential data, into insights that help significantly elevate everybody in the factory in their ability to execute and solve problems.
So looking forward 5 years, I'm going to be keen to see what happens with wearables. I noticed that Apple referenced PTC when it was launching and announcing its next generation product. What do you predict is going to happen?
Yeah, wow, that was a proud moment, first of all, for all of us at PTC, because it's not something Apple generally does in terms of calling out partners. I think that has really been one of the Achilles heels to some of the progress we can make in helping the worker. It's probably not the solution yet today, but I've had the opportunity to try a Vision Pro. And if you haven't, I strongly suggest you take the first opportunity you get. It is incredible. And what it can do, that just the vision that is now there for how you can bring information to anybody, but particularly people who are new to a role, new to a task, new to the factory, probably first and foremost to train them, to get them spun up on what they're going to experience when they hit the factory floor is incredible. I think 5 years from now, we're going to see continued advancement in those kinds of technologies. I'm hopeful, I'm excited for the day that, they can play an in situ role of helping operators on the factory floor, at scale in making them more productive. We're headed there, but the technology is too powerful to not end up playing a critical role in transforming how workers do their job.
But we're not waiting for wearables, right? We have with PTC's Vuforia product the ability to guide a new worker through a complex task to do it properly the first time, the next time, and frankly every time. That's really important to your clients in highly regulated industries, I'd imagine.
Yeah, both our Vuforia technology for sure, and even in ThingWorx, our connected work cell application. Let's back up for a second. The unfortunate reality today is many factories around the world, even from many factories in the best run companies, are delivering a paper binder or maybe a digital PDF to operators on the factory floor. There is a Grand Canyon of opportunity between that and ultimately what we can do with these kinds of technologies. But what's available tomorrow is the ability to ensure that when an operator on the factory floor has a task to do, that they always get the accurate data in the best form possible. Could be a 2D drawing straight out of a PLM system, could be a 3D model and simulation. Oh my gosh, that's a huge step forward, right? Or it could be an augmented visual experience through something like AR. But the great opportunity is that given where companies are today, there are multiple steps of maturity that can bring enormous value before we get caught up in, what's the utopia 5 or 10 years out.
As I close our conversation, you referenced America's beloved Grand Canyon. We have clients around the world who are very concerned about the environment and sustainability, and factories have not been known as sustainable contributors. It seems like there's a massive opportunity for IoT to play a role in helping make the world better.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much manufacturing companies can do, that really starts with the fundamental footprint of the product they design that then dictates the energy they'll consume both in manufacturing and in the field. So let's just start there. But specifically in the factory, two things. One, if people believe, and I can't imagine there are many people that will hear this that don't believe this or don't recognize this, most factories are truly in the neighborhood of 40 to 60% efficiency. Best-in-class factories in the world are 85%. Factory production accounts for a significant portion of the greenhouse gases that manufacturing companies produce today. So if we could just start by getting our factories to be more efficient, to increase the per part efficiency of a product flowing through the factory, that would be a huge step. And I think these digital technologies are going to help lift companies that are at 40, 50, even 60% efficiency to 60, 70 best-in-class kinds of numbers. If we did that globally across millions of factories, the carbon reduction that we would get out of that is mind-blowing. And that's all there for the taking. So one is just making it more efficient. Now, IoT technologies actually play an important role in helping to understand how you're using your energy and do that more smartly by thinking about the machines you have and the ones that are most energy consuming and how you can allocate your schedule to make the best use of those machines, meaning the least operational time for the most output. And so many of our customers, in fact, the number one use case over the last 18 months has been using IoT to be able to visualize energy consumption across the factory and then to be able to use that data to optimize through scheduling and other means how they can reduce that footprint. So again, many other ways, but within the factory, those are two home runs. Get more efficient and then be able to visually monitor and manage how your factories consume energy to reduce the footprint.
Well, this is, we have so much to talk about. Thank you, Howard, for being with me on our inaugural edition of the Lean Manufacturer. Today, we've spoken quite a bit about what happens before, during, and after production on the factory floor, how the Internet of Things and connectivity technologies are making smart workers even more capable of delivering more sustainable, more higher quality products. In coming editions, we'll have guests from the likes of JCI. Please don't wait for those coming editions. Engage Howard and me on social media. We'd love to hear feedback from you on these discussion points. And also, raise your hand if you'd like to join us here in the studio at the Lean Manufacturer. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for listening to the Lean Manufacturer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. And please leave a rating or a review. Be sure to check out other episodes to hear new perspectives on improving life for manufacturers in areas like operational efficiency, quality, sustainability, lean strategies, and the connected worker. If you have a topic of interest, a question, or want to provide feedback, email us at theleanmanufacturer@ptc.com or visit us at ptc.com/theleanmanufacturer.